I'm Brother Blakeney L. from the Moorish Temple of America, branch temple number 3 here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Brother, how are you?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
All is well, all is well. Islam. I'm going to jump right into these questions.
All right.
Briefly, what is nationality?
That's a great question. First and foremost, allow me to rise, giving all thanks and perfect praises unto the great God of Allah. Highest honor to his holy prophet, noble duality, and honor to all the Moorish American Muslims all over the planet Earth. I would also like to give a special thanks and shout out to the Healing of the Disenfranchised 2020 Virtual Summit, which has brought about this occasion in which I need to bring this information to the masses. However, nationality is, by definition, nationality is the quality of character that arises from the fact of belonging to a nation state. Nationality also determines political status, especially in reference to allegiance. However, nationality, in a more broader sense and for a more glorious purpose, is the information or the wisdom that detaches the Asiatic from the system of mental slavery, from the institution of mental slavery, from what we call in the Moorish Temple of America, European psychology.
Islam.
Nationality attaches one not only to their glorious past and their ancestors, but actually to their God, their ancient forefathers' way of thinking, their system of life, the way they eat, the way they walk, the way they talk. Nationality is very much important in these days and times because of the simple fact that Asiatics have suffered for over hundreds of years due to the systematic and the institution of slavery here in the Western Hemisphere under the iron hand rule of the European nations. And in this process, we've been stripped of our nationality, taken away from our, like I said, our fathers' heritage, our ancient forefathers' heritage, their divine creed, their way of thinking, their God. In the Holy Quran of Mecca, Al-Quran of Muhammad, it teaches us that the great God, Allah, created man in nations and tribes, that they may get to know each other and not despise each other.
Islam.
This within itself teaches us and gives us the ability to understand that nationality is also a divine concept. Nationality attaching one back to the God of their creation, and being able to identify with the higher principles known to man, the highest principles known to man, which we know in the Moorish Temple of America is love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Nationality also, as I said, determines political status. Political status being the relationship between the government in which we live. So, with that being said, we understand that those who are under the misnomers of Negro, black, and colored, those slave labels, titles, and marks that were placed upon the Asiatics in 1779 and lasted until 1865 during the time of slavery.
Islam.
This is a new era in time now, and all men now must proclaim their free national name to be recognized by the nation in which they live, or the government in which they live.
Islam.
The concept and the motto of this great country of the United States of America, and don't get me twisted when I say this great country of the United States of America, get it twisted with the iron hand rule of oppression of the pale-skinned nations of Europe. But the motto and the concept of this great nation, which means out of one comes many, out of one nation comes many. And when we think about this, the Prophet Noble Drew Ali also enlightened us and allowed us to understand that all citizens of this free national government are recognized by their free national names, and their name is decent. So therefore, to be black, Negro, colored, detaches you not only from the human family, because there's no Negro, black, colored, Ethiopian according to all divine records, it also detaches you from the constitutional fold of this government and your attachment to the human family, i.e. the family of nations.
Islam.
So, Negro, black, and colored. I would like to ask you, brother, since we're sitting here having this conversation, would you allow someone to call, if you weren't a Moorish American, would you still allow someone to call you a Negro? Okay, my question to all those who may not be Moorish Americans, who may consider themselves or attempt to identify themselves as black. I have a question for you. Would you allow someone to call you a Negro? And the reason why I ask this question is because Negro is a Spanish word. This word derives from a Latin word, which is necro. Necro meaning being spelled N-E-C-R-O, which actually means dead. Deriving from that word is the word Negro. Negro, according to science, means death. So here we go with the same concept and principle attached to these particular names, labels, and titles. See, and a title is a name. A name is attributes and characteristics. You see, that's why they say a good name is worth more than gold. So, however, the word Negro alludes to the word black, which derives from the word necro, which means death. So ultimately, if you wouldn't want anyone to call you a Negro, I think it would be pertinent that you understand that black and Negro definitely has the same meaning. So definitely nationality is most important for all human beings, not just Asiatics and those who have been misnomered with the names Negro, black, and colored, Ethiopian, etc., but also those who are under the impression that they can identify themselves by colors, such as so-called white people. Islam. They are not white. There is no white man. There's no black man. There's no yellow man. Neither is there a red man. To attempt to identify yourself with a color is actually linguistically incorrect, because a color is a descriptive word. A human being is a noun. So therefore, it's not proper linguistically to identify yourself by a color. So nationality is that which brings us back into the human consciousness of being a part of the greater of the human family, i.e. the family of Nation Islam.
Islam, praise Allah.
Now I got to jump into the second part of the question.
Yes, sir.
The importance of nationality.
Islam. Importance of nationality. All right. Beyond the concept of just considering yourself not black, what does nationality do? In my own studies, I have come up with this term called national identity, which brings about a collective identity, meaning that just like any other nation of the world, they are of one family, bearing one name, they speak a common language, they have common ancestry, they have common principles, etc., which they live by and govern themselves by. In the Holy Quran of the Moorish Temple, we have what is known as the Holy Covenant of the Asiatic nation. So therefore, what it does is brings about a collectiveness of consciousness, understanding that we all are in this together. This symbol, the unity grip, the hand being emblematic to the mind, the embracing of each other mentally, and our understanding of each other, being each other, him my brother, me his brother, her my sister, me her brother, understanding that if my brother's in adversity, assist him. If my sister's in trouble, forsake her not. And what this brings about is a necessity for economic security. It brings about a necessity for security of the nation. It brings about a collective awareness of advancement and a collective awareness of our own pursuit of happiness amongst many other nations here in this great nation of the United States of America. If we look out into society, we see so many so-called Negroes, blacks, and colors being slain in the street at the hands of the same officers who have sworn to protect the citizenry of this particular country. However, we see these particular officers make these grotesque and offensive moves on humanity without any consequences or repercussions nor punishment at the hands of the government, who vows to uphold the Constitution. However, we have to understand something. If a Chinese man is harmed in America, which we don't see this in society, if a Chinese man was harmed, they have the collective consciousness and the vehicle in which they can engage this particular government and get a redress of grievance. However, us as a Negro, blacks, and colors have failed to understand that just by clinging to those names and terms automatically attaches you from the constitutional fold of government, which affords you no right that any citizen or other nation is bound to respect, because you don't respect yourself. Because your ancient forefathers weren't black, they didn't call themselves black. That name was created by the pale-skinned nations of Europe, namely the Portuguese, who were the first to begin to use such derogatory statements. And that leads us back into a further history of the Portuguese and the pale-skinned nations of Europe having their same interest in subjugating the Asiatic lands. So nationality is so important for our survival, our salvation, our soul salvation in this particular country, because it brings about a collective awareness that brings about a protection that every other respected nation has.
Islam. Now I gotta ask this question.
Yes, sir.
What is the connection of the Moorish Science Temple of America to the indigenous people of America?
Well, first and foremost, the first connection to the indigenous people of America is first and foremost the Prophet identified us as these people. We have, a lot of our people who are considered indigenous, which I don't necessarily use that term. I rather use native. And I don't like to use the term Indian, because that is a misnomer as well. So I won't use either of those terms, but I will connect the thought. In the Moorish Science Temple of America, Holy Quran, chapter 47, which is the Egypt, the capital empire of the Dominion of Africa, the Prophet Noble Drew Ali informed us of something very pertinent. The Prophet Noble Drew Ali first said that the first people to inhabit Africa was Ham and Cush. First came Cush, then later his father Ham and his family, giving us the understanding that nobody was there at one particular point in time before Ham and his son, his Cush and his father Ham, came into this particular geographical location. However, amongst doing that, he gives us the advent of the great earthquake that caused the Atlantic Ocean. In scientific research, scientists have done their research and came up with the equation that the Atlantic Ocean is between 180 million years old and 186 million years old. So we do have a period in time which is called the pre-Andaluvian period, Pangea's period, where the earth was connected. But during this particular time, us as Asiatics, the ancient Moabites, the L's and the Bays, we were already inhabiting the planet. And we were already on this particular land mass that is known as America before the great earthquake that caused the separation between the land of the Father and the land of the Son. Meaning Ham's particular portion of the land, Cush's particular portion of the land. And it's quite common, it's quite interesting that at one particular point in time, most of Africa was known as Cush. So my question is, we have the son's land, who descends from the mother. Where's the fatherland? Now, in chapter 47, the prophet said also, then came Ethiopia. And then in our Quran questions for Moorish Americans, we're taught that Ethiopia means something divided. Now, when we do research on the Atlantic Ocean, we find out that at one particular point in time, this Atlantic Ocean was also known as the Ethiopian Sea. So, with that being said, it definitely supports the idea that we inhabited this particular portion before the great earthquake, which caused the Atlantic Ocean, which eventually caused the separation between this continent and the continent of Africa. So my question is, I'm in a particular place right now, and we'll take this small geographical location that we're in right now, just to give an example of the point that I'm trying to drive home at this particular point in time. We're all family, right? We stay on this particular landmass. It's one landmass. We're all united by common ancestors at this particular point in time. All of a sudden, there's a cataclysm that occurs, which separates the landmass, and now there's a body of water between us. Now, does the separation of the land separate the identity of these particular people? No, it can't. So the point I'm trying to make here is that we've been here way before the European even thought about getting in a boat and learning how to navigate the seas. It was the Moors who taught the Europeans how to navigate upon the seven seas. It was the Moors who were known as the lords of the seven seas. It was the Moors who civilized and fed the entire world. So the connection of the Moorish Science Temple of America to the indigenous people is our consciousness and our understanding that we have been here. We have been here before a great earthquake, which happened over 180 million years ago, and before the European decided to come here, which is Johnny come so much late, and as well before there was any slave ships created or made to bring us, so-called those who were in the continent of Africa at that time, over here. So my question to all of those is that, who were you before 1492?
Islam.
Who were you before the Roman Catholic Church, by the sanction of the papal bulls of the Pope of Rome, gave divine permission to these particular Europeans, Christopher Columbus as one, subjugate the Asiatic inhabitants? Who were you before then? Who were you before then? Who were you before the great earthquake? Because I can guarantee you, and I challenge anyone, that there was no Negro, black, or colored attached to any divine record of the human race. And I am of the human race, descendant of the ancient Moabites, a descendant of the true blood of the ancient Moabites and Canaanites. And I live in this days and times. I am native and original to this particular portion of the planet Earth, now known as America, now occupied by this governmental structure known as the United States of America. So that is our connection to the fight and the struggle of all indigenous people here in the wilderness of North America.
Islam.
Last question, and I think this one is more personal. How has it affected you in your life?
Only that I could say so much. In the Moorish Science Temple of America, we taught that, about that holy breath. Only thing we can say is it is, as was, and is evermore to be. Amen. However, nationality has afforded me the power to identify beyond the institution of slavery. To understand that I descend from a people, a nation of people who civilized the entire planet. Not just one particular portion, but the entire planet. My ancestors were the ones who brought about the sciences that govern all civilized nations. Hygienic, science, is arithmetic, mathematics, calculus, algebra, astronomy, astrology, and last but not least, my ancestors were the founders of the first religious and divine creed for the salvation of humanity. So what it has done is taken me back to my glorious back to my ancient forefathers, and ultimately connected me back to the greatness of my great God, Allah. And for me to understand that me and Allah, myself and Allah is one. That is the first instruction of our holy prophet, Noble Drew Ali, is that we come to know ourselves, know thyself and Allah, which is an ancient maxim. That maxim is ancient, as it was written on the walls of the pyramids in Egypt. And allow me to understand, allow me to state this, being that we had the conversation about indigenous people of America, I also understand that Egypt is just one of our glorious points in our history. It is not the beginning of our history. However, because we do have edifices, mounds, pyramids on this particular side of the globe that outdate and predate some of the oldest on the continent of Africa and in Egypt, because Egypt is in the continent of Africa, allow me to say. But me speaking about the Great Pyramid. So the greatest trick of the European was disorientation. To make you look this way when you should be looking this way. Islam?
Islam.
That is one of the greatest tricks of the European.
Can I add just a comment on that? I believe one of the identified names of this European psychologist is called the Hegelian dialectic. Islam. Indeed.
Islam. Research that.
Indeed.
Islam. So what Nationality has done for me is taken me out of the grave that the pale-skinned nations of Europe had buried my ancient forefathers, or my forefathers, in. That grave that has the tombstone upon which is written Negro, Black, Colored, Ethiopian, African American, Indian, Hispanic, Latino, etc. And that's not to disrespect anyone, but to give us the motive to study our glorious past.
Islam.
Peace and love.
Islam. Peace and love, brothers. Beautiful reflection. Praise Allah.